Africa is currently hosting a transnational organized crime meeting that's going to last for about 5 days. A number of stakeholders are there. The National Police Commissioner has just spoken there, but I see now speaking is the BMA Commissioner, Dr. Mike Masiapato. Let's listen in.
We're dealing with, from a border management point of view, is the ability to detect, particularly when people are trying to exit stolen vehicles out of this country into other jurisdictions. That is one thing that has been very much problematic, as the General has indicated. And of course, we have intensified collaboration between ourselves to make sure that we are able to detect those vehicles as intensively as possible to be able to deal with that particular challenge. But of course, the other issue that the General also emphasizes, the issue of the movement of illicit goods from other jurisdictions into South Africa. And of course, we are talking here about the movement that is more organized in nature, and that is other aspect of what we are actually dealing with, and that is why the national head of the Hawks is here. Our partnership becomes very much critical in terms of cutting the activities of those organized crimes, as well as some individuals who are actually continuing to subvert the growth of our economy, as it were, in this particular context. But of course, the other broader issues that we are dealing with, which are very much serious, is issues of, for example, the trafficking of children into our jurisdiction, in particular from other countries, as it were. And that is why we have started intensifying the partnership as the Border Management Authority, together with the Department of Social Development, to be able to deal with that particular scourge, as it were. And of course, that goes hand in hand with other aspects like broader issues of human trafficking, as it were. So one thing that we are actually doing on the basis of intensifying the work and be able to do proper interception, as you will be aware, is the rolling out of the biometric movement control system, which is also going to start assisting us to be able to deal with individuals who might be wanting to come into the country, for example, in false pretense. As the General indicates, they come in here in false pretense, they got documents that are not necessarily their documents and all of that. And therefore, now wanting to make sure that we actually have everybody fingerprinted. On that basis, we will be able to match the travel documents and the people themselves, and ultimately be able to identify individuals that are very much problematic. And that is why now the collaboration that we also have together with Interpol, particularly in the basis of picking up individuals that might be, for example, in the red notice, that might have committed crimes in other jurisdictions and try to enter our own jurisdiction, we should be able to pick them up and ultimately get them arrested and ultimately deported into those respective jurisdictions, so that they can go and face the full might of the law in those particular environments. So the development of this strategy, as we sit here today, is to be able to make sure that it is not just a SAPS issue, it's not just a Border Management Authority issue, but it is a whole of government approach in terms of dealing with this particular scourge. But not just a South African issue, but also working together with our neighboring countries, but ultimately working together with the broader SADC, as it were. And that is why we do have the leadership here from SADC, and ultimately be able to make sure that we partner together in dealing with this issue of interjurisdictional crimes, as it were, as it is mainly called the transnational organized crime. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shepherd, for that input and the perspective of integrated approach from government of South Africa. Maybe lastly, National Commissioner, through you, is just to allow, because the approach and the center of this development of this strategy is the involvement of SADC, that we just give the senior officer of SADC, Ms. Tanyani Gumede, just a short input and a summary of SADC driving this particular strategy and how it is unfolding in other SADC countries in the region. Thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to you all. What I can start by saying is that we are actually here for a very important process, the development of South Africa's national strategy to prevent and combat transnational organized crime, which is something that is also aligned to the regional strategy on transnational and on transnational organized crime, which has been developed obviously by the region and approved by the Ministerial Committee of the Organ in 2021. Now, as you are aware, the SADC region has developed the Regional Indicative Development Plan 2020-2030, and that plan was actually founded on the foundation pillar, which means that everything that is being done is founded or is based on the foundation peace and security, as well as governance. So this basically means that for the SADC to have peace and security, we need to ensure that our region is safe from crime. Without crime, then we'll be able to have a progressive region, and we'll be able to actually have a peaceful region which is safe from crime and obviously drugs. You have seen that the clip that was shown here by South Africa today has indicated a lot of other challenges that South Africa is experiencing, but it's not only South Africa, it's also the region at large. Trafficking in persons, trafficking in small arms and light weapons, vehicle theft as well, that affect our region. And we have to ensure that we come up with robust strategies that are actually supposed to cap transnational organized crime. And through our partners and also collaboration with other agencies, we're able to support member states, and it is our responsibility to support member states to develop such robust strategies, and this is our role here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Ms. Gumede for that input on behalf of the SADC office. And we will then go straight to the members of the media for any questions to the panel. We were able to get that summary of today's opening ceremony and those important. You can move your hand. You can then just pose your question and introduce yourself accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Chriselda Lewis from SABC Television News. All protocol observed. National Commissioner, the concern, and I think this integrated approach that South Africa is looking at together with other countries on the continent really signifies the fact that there are individuals that believe that South Africa is a safe haven for criminals. You mentioned the issue of a Mexican in Chriselda, who's involved in illegal activity. What you mentioned on the podium, there need to be tangible and workable solutions that actually need to come from this. It cannot be a talk shop. South Africa cannot continue to be seen as a safe haven to come and participate in criminal activity. What would you want to see achieved from this? And perhaps because we won't be part of the presentations for obvious reasons, we can't give criminals away what you are planning, but give us a sense of the extent of what we are dealing with at the moment. And yourself, perhaps, Commissioner, you spoke about biometrics. And biometrics has been, a very important issue because corruption has been one of the major issues that has been highlighted at our ports of entry. How far are we with this process? How far have we, since the establishment of the BMA, managed to deal with some of these issues? And perhaps on a sidebar, because you are here, 5 ports of entry have also been closed due to flooding. It's a huge problem that we're having at the moment. Perhaps you could shed some light on that as well. Thank you very much indeed. And one more, perhaps for SADC, sorry, colleagues. Is South Africa able to get the required assistance from other countries? Other countries have their own laws. It's not as easy as going to fetch someone in another country and say, come and stand trial for the crimes that you've committed in South Africa. To what extent, perhaps, do we even have challenges trying to extradite some of these individuals to South Africa? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chriselda, for the 3 questions to the panel members. Are we getting a question from NCA so that we can just take them back to back and get responses at once? Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Abdullah from ENCA. Just to add on to my colleague's question just around the borders, how well are you working with, for example, the likes of your Zimbabweans who do understand the soldiers assisting some of the citizens there to cross into the South African side of things? Also, just at OR Tambo, the 20 mules, of course, that you've apprehended for the last 6 months, how are you sort of getting that right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davile. We can then go straight to responses. National Commissioner, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chriselda. What we want to achieve out of this work session is that there should be a seamless working together, firstly by the departments in South Africa, that is your police, PMA, Home Affairs, all of them, including the private sector. The cooperation of the private sector is important because it is the private sector, remember, that would go out and import goods into the country. So if we work together, we'll be able to detect those that of the private sector that imports illicit goods into the country. So when we leave here, we want to have a strategy that will be able to talk to all angles, the banking sector, so that if there is anything that comes in, they are able to tell us. If there is anything that goes out, they are able to tell us, and we can take action immediately. And also with other departments, remember the importation of goods. Of course, some come illegal. So we need both us and SARS and Department of Trade Industry to know what is coming to the country so that we can stop all illicit things to come in. And if they do, be able to detect them and arrest those that are responsible. So that's what we want to achieve at the end of this work session. And on your other question of, I think the borders, my colleague will answer on that one. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. Maybe let's start by appreciating the question. Maybe let's start by indicating that, yes, indeed, as we started as the BMA, Chriselda, from the 1st of April 2023, part of what was our ultimate objective was to make sure that we move away from the old enhanced movement control system and be able to start rolling out the biometric movement control system so that we can be able to make sure that we fairly take biometrics of all of the people that are exiting or entering the Republic, as it were. And the ultimate intention for that was to make sure that we are able to identify some criminals or some people that will try to impersonate other people and all of those kind of issues. But of course, the rollout of the biometric had started sometimes in the past year, but we had some bit of a snag. And I think the snag was purely on the basis of the capacity of the existing network across our ports of entry that we had inherited, mainly from the Department of Home Affairs. So on that basis, we slowed down on that particular process, particularly because we're going into the festive period of 24-25 period, as it were, and that is why we slowed down. But now, as we speak, we are busy amplifying our networks across the ports in terms of the local aerial network, but also in terms of the wider aerial network. And the intention is to be able to start escalating the actual rollout in as far as biometric is concerned. So we consider that to be one of the biggest initiatives to make sure that we are able to deal with these issues of transnational organized crime, as it were, and the movement of criminals in and out of our country, as it were. Now, the issue of corruption, Chriselda, you are very much right, is one of the biggest challenges that we had to traverse. But of course, as the Border Management Authority, just as a practical example, I mean, we have been able to put around 50 or so of our officials, and most of those being immigration officers that had fairly been found to have been doing things that are outside the legislative framework, as it were. Up to this point, for example, just in the past 23 months of our operations, we can account for almost around 7 people that had been fairly fired, but we have around 50 or so as we speak that are undergoing processes in as far as disciplinary is concerned. And of course, the national head of the Hawks is here. He can confirm to you that just in the past 4 days, his team was at Bainbridge to also arrest some of the individuals there. There are 2 in particular that were found to be doing things that are out of sync. So we are, in a way, as you will know, have adopted a zero tolerance in as far as corruption is concerned. But we have also published our Operation Itibise number, which is basically to be used by the people on the basis of reporting any kind of nefarious activity that they might find across the ports ports of entry, as it were, in dealing with these particular issues. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But we do know that, Chriselda, in the longer term, we are looking at having, for example, our officials operating with body cams and all of that, so that their interaction with the travelers are actually put on camera, both visual and audio, to the extent that if there is any kind of nefarious activity is going to be picked up in as far as that is concerned. But of course, that is a process that is ongoing. As you will know, we are in that process with AMSCO, with the view of dealing with all of those issues going forward. So that is basically what I can say in as far as that aspect of corruption is concerned. Now, in terms of Tina's point about working relationship, I think this is one thing that we can all agree, particularly when it comes to the broader issues of illegal migration. We have to succeed if we have closer working relationship with our neighboring countries in particular, and of course be able to make sure that we collaborate, we work together, and we're able to deal with the scourge. Now, if you were to look at the rest of the other neighbors, we have 6 ultimately, but if you look at the 5, as it were, we have been having a lot of interactions with them with the view of getting that aspect effectively addressed or dealt with, to the extent that we're even able to sign an arrangement with the Lesotho, for example, on the issue of having the ability to return any other nationality that can be intercepted at the border with them, who is not a Lesotho national, so that they can be able to handle the burden with us, as it were. But from where we are now, your question is specific, and your question is about Zimbabwe. So what we can indicate on Zim is that there's still a lot of work to be done in as far as the collaboration between South Africa and Zimbabwe is concerned. And as you will know, the northern border is the biggest generator in as far as illegal migration is concerned, obviously with the eastern border with Mozambique. But of course, the Zim one is more critical, because it's not only one nation, it's not only Zimbabwe, but it's for the rest of the other people from other parts of the continent, whether it's the Congolese, the Zambians, the Malawians, and all of those countries, as it were. So I can confirm that we are still to amplify the conversation with the Mozambicans, the Zimbabweans, in as far as the joint tactical team is concerned, to be able to achieve that particular objective. We are not there yet, as it were. And that is basically the point that I can indicate. Then the last question that you have indicated, General Msikili will talk to it, around the interception and the arrest of the drug mules in Wartabo in particular, because that is one thing that SAPS has been very much central in dealing with that, and the General will give some bit of detail in as far as that part is concerned. But it demonstrates the collaboration that we've been able to achieve. General? Sorry. Yeah, no, indeed. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, no, indeed. Unfortunately, because of the serious rains in our western corridor, particularly in the borders with Botswana, we have been having very serious rains, unfortunately. So as of yesterday, as an example, we had been able to close 5 ports, as it were. Those were Groblersdrift Bridge, Pond Drift, together I'll just give you the name just now. So basically, we closed all of those various ports on the basis of the rain that has actually unfolded. But I've just been alerted now that one of the ports has just been reopened. Yeah, those ports, if I can just, is Stockport, is Mahubastad, is Bray, is Groblersdrift Bridge, as well as Pond Drift. So those were the 5 ports that had actually been closed because of the high water volumes, as it were, on them. But I've just been informed now that Mahubastad has just been reopened because the water overnight had been able to subside, as it were. Now, in terms of the Stockport, it was a very unfortunate reality. Yesterday, overnight, we had to also get our colleagues actually taken out of the port because they were fairly circled by the water around the Stockport, and they were sitting fairly in an island. And on that basis, we had to interact with our colleagues from Limpopo, Emergency Management Services. Through their helicopter, they were able to take the officials out of that particular port. So we will continue to monitor the activities, as it were, and on that basis, we are able to say that in the meantime, the travelers are supposed to be using other ports such as Kopfontein, for example, and they can also use ports such as Ramatlabama, for example, as well as Skilpark Hek in the interim whilst we are actually monitoring the situation. But as the water subsides, we will definitely be able to get them reopened as we go along. Thanks.
Thank you very much, SABC. Chriselda, I think I will be just direct and straight to the point. We have, of recent days, observed the operations that are happening at the Ortia as well as the KCA, and the remarkable successes that came from the operatives in that space. I think the Commissioner have already touched on the issue of collaboration. It's working together that has resulted in the recent successes that we're uncovering, in particular at Ortia, at KCA. But I need to emphasize the issue of our operational focus and concept, where we always encourage the operatives on the ground to first work on the intelligence. So our intelligence operatives are providing a proper intelligence, especially where you will have this huge consignment that is coming into the country, and the working together of the teams in this particular space. Ortia, to be specific, we have called upon AXA and all other security companies that are working there, and all operatives, both from BMA, from SAPS, from SARS, all the operators that are in that space, that their intelligence must be followed to the latter. The other issue that one needs to emphasize is the people's observation and intelligence that happen on the ground. Any suspicious movement, a suspicious person will be followed up, and most of the time it has resulted in these track mules being identified, and in KCA we will then follow up to the port where the consignment is kept, and the arrests will then happen. But over and above everything is intelligence, people intelligence, observation and vigilance of our operatives on the ground. Thanks.
Thank you very much, General Mzigidi, for that response. We will then take the response from the SADC office. There was a specific question to Ms. Kumede, so if you can just take the mic, Ma'am, and go to the specific question from Chriselda. Thank you very much. Angela is just moving the mic as well. Thank you, Brigadier Mate. Then we can get that.
Thank you very much, Chriselda. I think you have asked me a very unfair question, which I think it was supposed to be directed to South Africa. But I will answer that partly, and maybe the National Commissioner can then add. Because your question was specifically on whether other member states are supporting South Africa when it comes to extradition. So from a regional point of view, what I can tell you is that the SADC region has got different mechanisms as well as legal instruments that were developed by the same member states and ratified, which are currently also being implemented. And one such is the mutual legal assistance on criminal matters as well as the extradition. The protocol on mutual legal assistance and criminal matters and the extradition. So these protocols are being implemented by the SADC member states. And maybe just to say, we have seen some successes in terms of extradition. And we have seen certain criminals being extradited to where they're supposed to be extradited to. But to specifically say our member states are supporting South Africa, I would say yes, but maybe that's not the answer that you need. It's not every day that an extradition case is successful. And again, it may take longer for such cases to be fully implemented. So I think the best would be for now to give the National Commissioner to say something about that. That's all I can say about extradition from a regional point of view. Thank you.
Thanks. So that there is cooperation to a certain extent, not all. There are those that preaches cooperation, but practically you don't see it. So, but of course, you should be aware that we have two suspects in Swaziland which the authorities there are quite very much cooperating. It's only the court processes that needs to unfold, because every time they'll put in a appeal. So we are quite happy there with the cooperation of Eswatini. But of course, other countries, especially repatriations of people, it just don't really easily happen. Some, even the repatriation of vehicles, it's also easy said than done. When it comes to implementation, it just don't happen. So I must say, not all is rosy. There is a certain level of cooperation, but there is still a huge room for improvement by some SADC members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. Is there any follow-up, or can we?
1 or 2 questions, very short.
Just 2 more questions.
Yes, very short.
Can you just allow her to pose those 2 questions over to Chriselda?
National Commissioner, perhaps if you could give us an idea, because we won't be part of the presentation, what are the top 3 cross-border crimes that are keeping you awake at night now? And perhaps to yourself, Commissioner, I've got a question for my colleague on the floods. In terms of the infrastructure, is there budget for infrastructure? This is not the first time that we've had these borders closed whenever we've had heavy rains. So there obviously needs to be a much a better approach. Perhaps more money is needed to deal with this. That was a question from my colleague Katya from our economics desk.
Okay, thanks, Chriselda. Drugs, the coming in of drugs into the country is one greatest problem. The theft of vehicles out of this country going out is also number 2, and the illicit goods coming into the country, be it cigarettes, textile, is a huge problem. Of course, there is a number 4, which is the cybercrime, which affect a lot of people in this country, where their monies are siphoned by international criminals. Those are things that makes one not to be easy. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chriselda. On the issue raised by Katlego, let me put it this way. Firstly, you will remember that all the land, ports of entry in the country, as it were, had fairly been under the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure for all this while. So with the establishment of the BMA, Section 38 of the BMA does instruct us that we have to undergo a process wherein all this land, port of entry infrastructure has to be transferred from the Department of Public Works into the Border Management Authority. You will be aware that at the airports, for example, it is Airports Company South Africa. You will be aware at the seaports that it is Transnational Ports Authority. So in the land ports, it's going to be the Border Management Authority. That process, we have not yet concluded it because it is very much complicated. We are going to be using the National Disposal Asset Act, or the National Asset Disposal Act, that we are going to be using for this particular purpose. Now, the question that is being asked is about the budget and the infrastructure. The first thing that we can indicate, you will be aware that we have actually gone out to the market as the Border Management Authority, together with the Department of Home Affairs, to be able to upscale, redesign and redevelop our top 6 commercial ports. Those being Beitbridge to Zim, Lebombo to Mozambique, Oshuk to Eswatini, Fixberg, as well as Maseru Bridge to Lesotho, as well as Komfontein to Botswana. So these 6 ports are going to be redesigned, redeveloped completely through a public-private partnership. As we speak, we are going to have the successful bidders out sometimes in March. So that is the first part in as far as the redesigning of the ports and all of that. But in terms of the rest of the other ports, I can confirm that the budget in as far as the taking care of infrastructure in terms of land ports, already we've finished that administration together with the National Treasury and the Department of Public Works. From the 1st of April 2025, which is basically the new financial year, all that particular budget will be coming to the BMA, and we are going going to use that for the purposes of repairs and maintenance in as far as this infrastructure is concerned. So that is where we are in as far as this part is concerned. However, if you look at ports like Groblersdal Bridge, for example, that one, it is completely sitting on the flat line. Literally, it is sitting on the flat line. It is sitting at a point where Limpopo River actually does a drift, to the extent that when the river is full, the water does not drift completely. Part of the river goes straight into the port. So we have already started conversations through the Department of Transport together with Botswana to be able to see how do we possibly kind of relocate the port or do something, because it is something that has been there for years and it is not something that is going to be easily resolved unless there is that possibility of shifting of the port, as it were. But in terms of this other port, like Stockport, for example, they are not necessarily traditionally flooded. It's just that this time the water was bad. But as for Groblersdal Bridge, that is basically what we are looking at doing going forward. So that is the response in as far as this part is concerned. But I can generally confirm that there's still a lot that needs to be invested in as far as the border environment is concerned for us to be able to do the work of border management better, as it were. And I suppose public-private partnership is going to assist us going to the future, because we know the fiscus is constrained. We will only be able to easily unlock these things through partnership with the private sector. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Masheva. I think that takes us to the conclusion of this media engagement that we've just had. Mr. Commissioner, thank you very much for leading this particular media engagement. Thank you to the Commissioner of BMA. Let's thank General De Villa, the National Head of the DPCI, the Deputy National Commissioners of SABC, General Msekida and General Sibia, and also the SADC office represented by the senior official, Ms. Gomede, and from our Regional Bureau in Harare, Mr. Morane. It takes us to the end of this media engagement. The National Commissioner, there is a request for a one-on-one from ENCA to interview the National Commissioner and also to interview the National Head of DPCI. So they will move their cameras to the adjacent banner for that one-on-one, so that we can do that quickly and be able to go for a group photo and allow the session just to commence and to continue with the deliberations of the day.
All right, so there you have it, really important gathering that's about to take place in Pretoria. It's a 5-day meeting essentially aimed at clamping down on transnational crime. That essentially speaks to crimes that are committed across borders, so to speak. And this is a SADC initiative, if you like. And so we're set to hear from not only authorities here at home, but certainly from 6 of our neighbors who I understand are in one way or the other represented there. There's a lot to get through, but just to give you a quick summary of the outcomes of that media briefing, we're told there's going to be a deliberate strategy that's aimed at clamping down on transnational crimes. That includes drug smuggling, the proliferation of guns, illegal immigration, a huge issue for South Africa. In fact, a concession being made there by the BMA that the northern parts of our borders are the most busy when it comes to this kind of illegal activity. It's interesting to hear that there's been an agreement already signed between South Africa and Lesotho when it comes to making sure that people who cross the border either way are actually taken back to where they need to be. In fact, the words used by the commissioner there, Dr. Mike Masiapatu, is that the agreement is aimed at ensuring that the burden is shared. He went on to mention there that it doesn't seem that there's the same level of cooperation with Zimbabwe, which, of course, lies on the northern parts of the country's border. So that's very interesting. I wonder to what extent this particular 5-day meeting will change that. We're told there's a ramping up of biometrics to scale up the ability of the BMA to clamp down on this type of crime. Body cams in the works, we're told. And in fact, part of what's also coming out there is hopefully a whole lot more interactions between Interpol and the SAPS here at home. You might remember in the past there was already some kind of bilateral engagement. I wonder to what extent that is going to assist in this multilateral meeting that's going to take place in Pretoria. Understandably, we're not privy to the presentations that are going to be delivered because, of course, this has to do with national security. But I have no doubt that our team there, including Chriselda Lewis, will get you a sense of what else you need to know, at least from today's engagement, given the fact that the gathering will last over 5 days.